Following the First World War, Germany underwent a dramatic transition from monarchy to democracy. In 1919, the Weimar Republic was established, marking Germany's first experience with democratic government. Yet, from its very beginning, the new republic faced serious challenges to its authority. In January 1919, the Spartacist uprising led by communists threatened the new government from the left. Just a year later, in March 1920, the right-wing Kapp Putsch attempted to overthrow the republic and restore authoritarian rule. Both coup attempts failed, but they demonstrated the fragility of Germany's new democracy. Political violence became endemic in the early Weimar years. Between 1919 and 1922, an astounding 356 politicians were assassinated, creating an atmosphere of fear and instability. This wave of violence threatened to tear apart the very fabric of the new republic. Despite these challenges, the Weimar Republic managed to create one of the world's most progressive constitutions for its time. It guaranteed universal suffrage, civil liberties, and democratic representation, all significant advances for German society. However, the Republic's association with the humiliating Treaty of Versailles severely undermined its legitimacy in many Germans' eyes. The new democracy struggled to gain widespread acceptance, as many citizens viewed it as a government born from defeat and shame. Germany's post-war economy collapsed catastrophically in the early 1920s. Unable to pay the enormous war reparations imposed by the Treaty of Versailles, Germany faced a devastating economic dilemma. Germany began printing money to meet its obligations, a decision that would lead to one of history's most notorious cases of hyperinflation. By 1923, Germany was in the grip of hyperinflation. The value of the mark plummeted at an astronomical rate. At its peak, prices doubled every 3.7 days. What cost 100 marks one week could cost 400 marks the next. People needed wheelbarrows full of money just to buy basic goods like bread. The currency had become virtually worthless. The middle class was devastated, as their life savings became worthless virtually overnight. People who had saved all their lives suddenly had nothing. In November 1923, Germany introduced a new currency called the Rentenmark. Backed by land and industrial goods, it finally stabilized the German economy. Though the currency was stabilized, the psychological impact of this economic trauma remained deeply embedded in German society. The hyperinflation crisis created lasting distrust in democratic institutions and made radical political solutions increasingly appealing to a traumatized population. Despite these economic hardships, the Weimar period would also witness a remarkable cultural transformation. Despite the political and economic challenges of post-war Germany, the 1920s witnessed an extraordinary cultural renaissance known as the Golden Twenties. Between 1923 and 1929, as Germany recovered from hyperinflation, Berlin transformed into one of the most vibrant cultural centers in Europe. Berlin emerged as Europe's cultural capital, attracting artists, writers, and intellectuals from around the world. The Bauhaus movement revolutionized art, design, and architecture with its functional approach and clean aesthetics. German expressionist cinema produced groundbreaking films like Metropolis and The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari that influenced filmmakers worldwide. Writers and playwrights like Thomas Mann and Bertolt Brecht redefined German literature and theater with innovative works. Scientific progress continued even during difficult times, with significant advancements in physics, chemistry, and medicine. Beyond the arts and sciences, German society experienced profound social transformation. Women gained voting rights in 1919 and embraced new fashions and lifestyles, challenging traditional gender roles. Berlin's nightlife became legendary, with famous cabarets and dance halls. Jazz music gained popularity, and the city became known for its permissive atmosphere. The period also saw relatively greater tolerance for LGBTQ communities, with the first gay rights organizations and Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute for Sexual Science. However, this cultural flowering was not embraced by everyone. A significant cultural divide emerged between urban and rural Germany. Conservatives viewed the Weimar culture as evidence of moral decay and degeneracy. Rising nationalist movements positioned themselves against cosmopolitan Berlin. This cultural polarization mirrored the growing political extremism that would ultimately end the Weimar Republic. The combined trauma of military defeat, economic collapse, and political instability created fertile ground for extremist movements in Germany. The Nazi Party, founded in 1920, initially remained a fringe group with minimal support. In those early years, they were just one of many radical political factions. Adolf Hitler attempted a failed coup known as the Beer Hall Putsch in Munich in 1923. The coup was quickly suppressed, and Hitler was sentenced to prison, where he wrote Mein Kampf. The 1929 Wall Street crash triggered another devastating economic crisis in Germany. Unemployment soared to over 30%, and millions of Germans lost their life savings. This catastrophe created perfect conditions for extremist parties promising simple solutions. By 1932, the Nazis had transformed from a fringe movement to Germany's largest political party. Their aggressive nationalism, anti-Semitism, and promises to restore German greatness resonated with many desperate citizens. On January 30th, 1933, President Hindenburg appointed Adolf Hitler as Chancellor of Germany, believing conservative politicians could control him. Within weeks, Hitler had begun dismantling democratic institutions and establishing a dictatorship. The fragile democracy established after World War I ultimately couldn't withstand the combined pressures of economic disaster and extremist politics. The Nazi rise to power marked the end of the Weimar Republic and the beginning of one of the darkest chapters in human history.